Oh, hi. Hi, everybody. It's me. I'm back. Leslie the Little Plaza. Zazoo Plazz. Or, you know, I do a test every week. When I first start out, because I have to get going, because I need to get like a jump start, and then I'm off and running. And I have to take a couple deep breaths because my mind is so full of stuff. But anyway, and also I've had too many fails with my microphones. So I always do a sound test to make sure that I didn't shut something off in the setup, or that I'm coming through, because I don't want to make that mistake anymore. Get through the whole thing, say, "Oh, that's a damn good report," and then realize that the mic has been off the whole time. I've done it. I've done that. And I say every time, I say, "That's the end. That's it. I'm not going to do that anymore." And then I do it again. Sometimes these things happen. It's Mercury retrograde or whatever. I flow with it. I try not to beat myself up too much, but at the same time, we ain't got time for that. We don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. I don't want to. This kind of matches, doesn't it? Is trying to figure out, is this called Labradorite? I remember because I used to have a Labrador. Well, she was a mutt. She was pug, black lab, and Jack Russell. Like Eddie from Frasier. Hold on. My kitchen chair was crooked. I had to go fix it. I'm feeling a little particular today, let's just say. Like the guy who was in, that's the song for today, from Boston. The guy, Tom Schultz, who was in Boston. He's like a really smart guy, like an MIT grad, like at the top of his class. And he set up a recording studio in his basement and started the band Boston. So I guess he worked for Polaroid or something. It's to do with nothing. Of course she's coming in now. I'm doing my damn report. Oh, I swear this woman's got radar on me. Every damn time I do my video, she comes in. I said, "No, it's fine. She's out." No. I swear. She's part of the, she's got tabs on me. Anyway, damn it, go out again. I can't. I just gotta move. I've gotta move. Anyway, it's always somebody trying to shut me up. Well, I'll be damned. Okay. No more. All right. Okay, let's see what we got. Yeah. So I went out. Was it Friday night? I went out because my cucumber plant is coming in. It's going all over the place. And they taped up the doorbells and everything. It rained a lot all last week, so they couldn't pressure wash our buildings. But I think they're going to do it tomorrow. So I got to get my plant ready, and then I got to take it in. So in case I'm sleeping and they start early, my little cucumber plant. Either that or I've got this plastic tarp from when I ran the half marathon. I could drape it over there and tape it up and just, put a few plastic bags over it just to make sure that it doesn't get, just who knows if they're even going to go back out there. But I bought these, those little stakes that you get. They have them at Job Lot for when it snows, and they're reflective, and you can put it, around your driveway or whatever so the plow can see. So I got 3 of those, and I figure I'm going to make a little teepee thing. A little triangle tent thing. And I'm going to put the little green tape around and make a trellis. And then all the leaves can kind of go out the sides, It's a hack. I'm not buying one of those cage things. I don't have room for that. And I don't need that. I can just, and then I can use the sticks for something else. Maybe. Okay. Yeah. So I'm talking about that. Oh, and our youngest son came back from Oregon with the fire crew, and they did a little story on him early. Like they came back last Sunday night, so like Monday they did a little story on him, and so that was nice. They got back safely. They had a good. They had a successful mission, so that was good. Putting out the wildfires. I don't know that they put all of them out, but they certainly helped, which is much appreciated. And every time they go out, the crew, they all have to get along, and they learn from each other. They teach each other things. Everybody's got a different specialty, and some of them come from Connecticut Deep, where I used to work in communications, the State Environmental Protection Agency. Some of them they come from all different, from firefighters, all different, backgrounds. And our kid, he's a forestry major, and he works in conservation and forestry. So he knows a lot about trees and things, and he does controlled burns and all that. I've talked about that before, but it's Leo season, so it's important to talk about. It's a fixed fire sign, right? Yeah, I'm going to make a chicken pot pie later. That's going to be my dinner. I got to make sure I have enough energy. I got to have my snack after this, my cashew butter rice cake. If you're familiar, you come here every week. You know the deal. I have to have my healthy paleo hot chocolate, and it rejuvenates me. But it's important to talk about today because the theme is nourishment and what satisfies us in terms of, food versus, it being a metaphor for spiritual food. So there's the loaves and the fishes, the fish. Most Catholics and most people who've, been brought up in the Christian faith, particularly the Catholic faith, have heard that story. It's a very famous story. But you can't take it literally. There's a lot of, symbolism. Teaching it to kids, they do take it literally, But so you have to. When I used to teach it to the kids, we'd have I don't know, when we would talk about the Eucharist, whether when the kids were like second grade, they would make their third grade, second grade, I forget. When they're about 7 or 8, they'd make their first communion. And I think Zach made his, was it 2011? Something like 2010, 2011. Yeah, I think the year they turn 8. And mine was 1973. So I was 7. But, we would, have, I would bring in like grape juice, or, the kids would have to go before their first communion to an all, like a Saturday thing where they had like little tastings for them, and they got to learn about how the sacrament of the Eucharist, how Jesus, blessed and broke the bread and blessed the wine, and the whole thing. They didn't give wine, but there's this, the concept of nourishment, the concept of abundance and sustenance, and that's central to family life. We're keeping the family nourished, keeping us going. That's kind of, it's central to family, and it's central to our life, our spiritual life too. Because, if you're doing something that doesn't satisfy you, or you're, just going through the motions in life, you're not going to be satisfied. And it's because you don't have a connection, a Christ, that Christ connection. That's, you know, our to our own divine purpose. If you're disconnected from the divine source, you're going to feel, nothing's going to satisfy you, right? So, yeah. So I don't want to get too deep too early. I'll get into it. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. Oh, it's Psychic Day. I talked about a lot of this stuff on my Facebook page, so I'm just going to get into it. Just to swing through the. Oh, shut up! That stupid bird is out there now. Now the stupid bird is trying to talk over me. Okay, yeah. So, Sun is conjunct Jupiter in Leo, so that's interesting. Yeah. And then the moon is in Pisces, the last degrees of Pisces, 27 degrees. So we've got some water. Mercury is in Cancer. We've got some Earth. Let's see, Venus is in Virgo, and Mars is in Gemini. Oh, Mars is square Venus, because Mars is in Gemini, 24 degrees. Venus is 25 degrees Virgo. So that's going on. Mars and Venus. Male, female energy, So we got, I don't want to go into the astrology too much, but we have Sun square Saturn, which is interesting. Leo into Aries. Oh, no, trine, not square, trine. So that's favorable. Sun trine Saturn. Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting. So the first reading comes from, the prophet Isaiah. And he says, he said, he's the prophet. It's Psychic Day. Prophets were psychics. They got messages, directly from God. And they're trying to tell people, and sometimes people didn't listen to them. Sometimes people did awful things to the prophets, but they kept trying, So Isaiah said, I say it to you. Okay. But yeah, tip your waitress. I'll be here all night. He said, God's saying to come to him for water, bread, milk, wine for free, right? But it's a metaphor. He says, why spend your money on what is not bread and fails to satisfy? What he's talking about is like what, binds us to the earth, the things of the third dimension, the things of the matrix, the material world that has not, you're going to be hungry again. In other words, if you're working and all of your focus is on just getting by, right? And you think this is all there is, right? Then nothing you spend your money on is going to satisfy you. You can do anything, drink anything, eat anything. It's going to wear off. Go buy a car. It's going to it's going to depreciate the minute you drive it off the lot, right? You go and you shop and you buy things. You get tired of them. How soon after you go shopping do you forget whatever it was, but in the moment, it's the most important thing. You got to buy this. And that's what marketers want you to do, right? The whole world is out to get you to pay attention to this and buy that and go here and vacation there, or else you won't, And then if you do all these things, then you're going to be so happy. Well, Isaiah says, no, he says, listen, that you may have life, right? He will renew. He's renewing the everlasting covenant that, the benefits that he assured King David back in, he's saying way back when, remember I told you there was this, these blessings that are coming to you. Well, he's saying God hasn't forgotten about that, right? You just kind of need a reminder every now and then, right? Because we forget. We're down here, and we've forgotten some things. So then the Psalm 145 says, "The hand of the Lord feeds us. He answers all our needs." I like that one. So it's Sun conjunct Jupiter. So Sun is the father, right? And Jupiter is, expansive and bounty and all that. And this is the time of year. So, those two are conjunct, right? So, in other words, there's this message of, the sun having shone down, and, the waters, we've watered all the plants that we planted way back when. And now the gardens are starting to, the farmers markets are starting up. They're starting to, these gardens are starting to yield produce in August. See, that's when we start to see all the, by the end of the month, we're so tired of the zucchini. We don't know. We got so many tomatoes. We're giving them away. We're throwing them out. Here, have a tomato. But now, we haven't seen anything yet. It's kind of, the corn hasn't quite started. It's around this time the corn starts to come out, but it's slow, right? You're looking every day to see if there's something, is there something on the vine? There's some, So, he says, give them food in due season. And that's what this means. It's everything is seasonal, right? Nature, it all happens when it's supposed to happen. You can't make the cucumbers grow faster. There's this notion of wanting to be, all powerful, or, have power over other people, or, have everybody looking at you, and this, but you can't make the crops grow. I mean, you can water it, you can fertilize, whatever, but, the Mother Nature takes its time, right? In due time. And then, if there happens to be not enough water or too much sun, things get dried out. Yeah, you can do some things, but if there's going to be a famine, there's going to be rain, there's going to be rain. You can, water. Of course you water your plants, but back in biblical times, right? They didn't have, they had to really rely on all these cultures. Why do you think that they prayed to the gods of nature to bring the crops? So he says, well, we can trust that, God's watching out. He's not going to let us starve, right? You just have to ask from your heart, right? And Leo rules the heart, not from your ego or your head, right? But from a sincere place. And then you will be rewarded, in that way. In other words, if you're like, oh yeah, God's going to be, no. See, because then you're full of yourself and you're too much Leo. Leo can be too much. You gotta kind of temper it a little bit. Okay. So Romans 8. It says, well, okay, so Paul, in the letter to the Romans, he's talking about, this idea of us being separated from the Christ, the love, the love of Christ. And he's saying, we can conquer, in all situations. And he names all these things that, we worry about, right? What the sword, distress, peril, powers over us. He says we can conquer overwhelmingly all of these things through Christ, through him, through love, right? Through the love that Jesus came to show us, right? To give us. He says, no angel, no death, nor life, nor present, nor future, nor depths, nor heights can separate us. And really what he's saying is it's within us, right? What can it, religion likes to tell us that God is separate, right? But Jesus is saying, no, you can't, it's not separate, because we are, once we realize our connection to everything, then we realize that we can't, nothing will, will quench, nothing will put out that fire, that, right? That light that we carry within us. It's our birthright. We don't know it's there. People try to tell us to be quiet or snuff us out. They want to do that because so that other people won't see us shining, and they won't, if we shine, others will see that, and then they will begin to shine. They will realize that they have that light within them, right? So there's, certain forces that don't want that, and they, but we persevere, right? Despite all that, we reveal it, right? By shining, we reveal that which had been previously, in the dark. So stuff that's in the dark doesn't want to be revealed. So you could just sit there, right? You shine a light on it. So, okay. So then, all right, Zazoo. Preachy. All right. So, yeah, take it or leave it. Just take it with a grain of salt. I'm just spouting. Okay, so Matthew 4. So in this quote, you hear all the time, man or woman, humans do not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. So this is the story where Jesus, he hears that John the Baptist has died, and he needs a little time to himself. So he takes a boat, goes out in a boat, goes to this deserted island or whatever, and then the paparazzi, the press and all his posse, Jesus went over there. So all these people, this huge crowd of people follows him, right? And he's preaching to them. And he feels sorry for them. So he starts curing them and stuff and talking to them. And then it gets to be dinner time, and all his, apostles are like, yeah, well, can we see, they didn't have DoorDash. So he says, send them down to the town so they can get Taco Bell and McDonald's, and they can get some food because everybody's going to be hungry. So Jesus says, no, you feed them, you cook, you give them some food. They're like, well, we don't have this. This one kid over here with a basket with 5 loaves and a couple of wrapped up fish and whatever. So he said, so he blesses the bread and the fish, right? And then they pass out the food, and the parable says that the story says that everybody ate. They said over 5,000, not including the women and children. So that's just men. They filled 12 baskets with leftovers. Now 12 is significant because that was the number of the apostles, and the number of zodiac signs is 12. 12 months in the year, it's significant. The 12th house, which is ruled by Pisces, the fish, and 5 baskets. The 5th sign is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Leo, right? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, Leo is in the 5th house, which rules creativity and creative expression and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's kind of important. But so this they said, one explanation might be that everybody started sharing what they had because, it was understood that people wouldn't have gone out there without some provisions, right? But, in so doing, everybody shared their food, and that's how he was able to do it. But, that's not my focus here. It's, it was the saint of the day was Saint Peter Julian Amard. Is it raining? No, it's getting windy. It's some people out there. So this saint was the founder of the Congregation of the Blessed Sacrament, and he was, all about the Eucharist. That was his focus. So it's interesting that he's celebrated today. It's his saint day. The same day they have the reading about the loaves and the fish. So yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Yeah. So if you look at it and you pick things apart, and it all kind of it fits together. So this is what I do. This has been my spiritual journey. How I write things down and I draw lines between things, and it's an ongoing thing. It's gotten a lot more deep, I should say. Like the more I do this, the more, I guess, satisfying it does get, because I started, when I started, it's like what I thought was deep when I first started looks really shallow now, because I've, and even my writing has gotten a lot deeper, a lot more satisfying, right? Since I've been doing this. So I think that's what it means, is that the more time you spend, in meditation, in reading the holy, words from God, not that you have to go to any church or be in any religion, but you read holy texts, whatever faith that might be, whatever speaks to you. I read a lot of different things. I read Eastern writers. I Western, all over the place, and I find them all inspiring. I was raised Catholic, so that's the easiest for me to delve into, right? And also I know astrology and all that stuff. But the more I learn, the things that I find kind of fit together, I put them in my toolbox. Think, oh, that's a good thing. I'll write that down. So, and then it becomes part of my own personal practice. I guess it's the only word for it. They call yoga, a practice, because you keep doing it over and over, and you get better, and then you realize how much you don't know. So you have to keep practicing, right? And, our whole lives we're doing this. Nobody ever gets there. It's continual. So that's evolution. And, okay. So the song for this week is, like I said, Boston. It's a song called, I never heard this song before. August 2nd, 1978, they released their second album called Don't Look Back. And that song, Don't Look Back, was on it. This album did get to number 1. And I think Don't Look Back got like number 4, something like that, on the Billboard. It did really well. But this song, Feeling Satisfied, it's a good song. It's kind of, underrated. They say it's a tribute. It's a really upbeat tribute to rock and roll, the power of rock and roll to heal, to soothe, And, I was in like middle school when these songs came out. So I wasn't quite a teenager, but I was kind of like 12 and, ish, 7th grade, 8th grade. So Brad Delp did the vocals, and some of the lyrics just jumped out at me. Do whatever you feel. That's Leo, right? The heart, from the heart. to get through the stormy weather. So that's interesting. And that kind of hits to the first two, the Psalm and the Isaiah reading, right? It says about satisfying, what satisfies, right? And uh, getting through all these things, right? The Romans reading, what will get us, overwhelmingly, we will conquer these things, right? So he's talking about in the song, getting through the stormy weather. I mean, it's perfect. Give your mind a ride. So you could say, give your mind a ride. I think Boston is like driving in the car kind of music, on I-84, going up to Boston, the Mass Pike. This is the kind of music that I would listen to. Like, I went to college in Boston, so this is the kind of music I'm more in high school. I think I listened to it than college because, middle school into high school, Boston was pretty popular. And they're from New England, so give your mind a ride is kind of like, it's kind of boomery sentiment, but sort of like, I don't know, tune in, tune out, that kind of like, that boomer sentiment is all I can think of. Take a ride. In other words, give your mind a ride. Give your mind a rest. Kick it out. Put it in the back seat. Take your brain and give it a ride. You take the wheel. Put your brain in the back seat, right? And go and lead with your heart. Lead with what makes you happy, makes your soul sing, right? I think that's what he's saying, which is rock and roll, which is, basically rock and roll is it's that joie de vivre. It's that whatever you feel in the moment, right? Rock on. Whatever. I'm not saying that, but it was a little different from the boomers than it was for my generation. Gen X, we're a little not so freewheeling. Not so, we're a little more practical, down to earth, we didn't, the party was kind of over by the time we came. I was thinking about that today, how, because we were the Pluto and Virgo generation. And Virgo comes after Leo. Leo, those were the early boomers, right? It's like, hey, whatever goes. And then we came along and Virgo's like, no, you better get ready to go back to school. You got to go to school tomorrow. You can't go and party. You got to eat your vegetables and, none of that funny stuff. And, no, go clean your room. That was our generation. But anyway, I guess they had a good time. At least, I try not to be too bitter about it. I'm trying to understand where they're coming from. It was an optimistic time before we came along. We missed it, but they put it into the music, right? So that we, following their generation, we could sort of have their music to guide us, inspire us, right? Keep us going through the tough times. That's why Leo precedes Virgo, because Virgo is sort of, back to basics, back to business, serving, health issues and all that. But we had good music playing in the background while we were doing all this stuff, right? So it's all good. That's how we get through it. So anyway, that's all I have to say for this week. So I hope you have a satisfying week, doing what you love to do. And I will be here. I will see you next week. Same place, different time. Take care.